I've encountered several people who have noted that for them, one of the most meaningful Mahayana scriptures is the Diamond Sutra. And for me too, back in the day, it was just amazing to see this explication of the nature of reality, given that no words or concepts can accurately portray reality. And yet, this scripture comes closer perhaps than any other. And of course, this is one of the Prajnaparamita scriptures, of which there are about 40 according to Edward Cahn's. And, it's been translated by many different folks. You'll recall, by the way, that this is the sutra that Huineng, the sixth patriarch of Chan Buddhism, also got turned on to, and that really helped stimulate his enlightenment. If you haven't read that sutra, it's a great one, and you might want to expose yourself to the story of the sixth patriarch. But in any case, I did a recitation of F. Max Muller's translation, and that was from a book called Buddhist Mahayana Texts, which was originally published in 1894. So this was one of the very first Western translations, or translations in English, of a Buddhist scripture. It was in volume 49 of the Sacred Books of the East, which was a 50-volume set of English translations of Asian religious texts edited by Max Muller and published by the Oxford University Press. By the way, all those books are in the public domain. But in any case, one of the listeners on my channel, he raised an important question about the Diamond Sutra. He said, "Do Buddhists deny that this is a kind of nihilism? To me, it sounds like glorification of nihilism. Not that that's a bad thing or a thing at all, but if the children and ignorant people perceive it as nihilism, then it becomes an excuse for doing any deed, regardless of consequences. It seems to me that Buddhism needs the transmigration of souls idea as a moralizing mechanism to avoid conventional nihilistic results. But if there is no self, then what is being reborn? Is not the transmigration of souls as much a no thing as any other? Reason cannot make sense of it, but that's okay. Reason is also without self." Now, I'm not going to get into every aspect of this comment, but I do want to get into the question of nihilism because, this can be confusing given that while the Buddha in the Diamond Sutra, in his instruction to bodhisattvas, says they are to orient themselves and make vows to save all beings, at the same time they are to recognize that there are no beings, and that if a bodhisattva believes in a being or a personality, or to use the terms in this comment, believes in a soul, then he is not a proper bodhisattva. So what does this mean? And how can we avoid this sort of risk of antinomianism that would perhaps come about if somebody takes a totally nihilistic interpretation of the Lotus Sutra? This is what I responded with. I said, "You are asking some important questions, and I am a mere layman. But yes, it is my understanding that they, or we, definitely deny this kind of nihilism. There is a, quote, flip side to the notion of emptiness, or sunyata, called tathata, or suchness, that affirms the reality of our here and now experience of things. In a fundamental sense, that is true reality, and implies that we are being reborn every moment of time." This is my concept of karma, by the way. I don't find it particularly useful to think in terms of sort of total lifetimes, one after another. And my understanding, although I could be wrong and I'm happy to be corrected, is that this may have been a hangover from Hinduism. But, we are different every moment in time. So literally, there's a rebirth every moment. I'm not the same person I was when I started this video, for example. And so, this is the kind of context in which I think we can talk about karma and rebirth. But anyhow, going back, I said, in a fundamental sense, that, namely tathata, or suchness, which affirms the reality of our here and now experience of things, here and now, this very moment, that experience of suchness in a fundamental sense is, quote, true reality, and implies that we are being, quote, reborn in every moment of time. And certainly our actions in this moment affect those in the next, for better or worse. This is the concept in Buddhism of causes and conditions. What I do this very moment affects what happens in the next moment, and that affects the following moment after that. So there are so-called karmic consequences. Behaviors do have consequences, for better or worse. I said certainly our actions in this moment affect those in the next, for better or worse. So this is the basis for my way of thinking about karmic consequences. From another perspective, emptiness, or sunyata, simply means empty of any totally independent existence or, quote, self, implying that we are all interdependent and interconnected. And it's this interdependence or interconnectedness that I believe leads to the deeper sense of compassion toward our fellow beings. Why? Because there's no such thing as helping only ourselves if in fact we are interconnected. And I think that's really a basic notion that the Buddha is trying to get across implicitly in his preaching in the Diamond Sutra. And I said, finally, I would like to say that you are right in having a concern about what I have heard called antinomianism. Buddhist doctrine is laced with precepts, much as in other religious traditions. These are not to be ignored simply because a deeper reality is fathomed. Anyhow, thanks so much for your thoughtful comments. Now, of course, in Shin Buddhism, things are a little different in the sense that, we don't presume to commit ourselves to following the precepts, because those represent a kind of practice. But you'll recall that in the Tani Sho, Shinran, the founder, was said to have indicated to his disciple or to his colleague, Yenbo, who wrote the Tani Sho, he said, just because there's an antidote doesn't mean we should take a poison. So he and Honen before him, his teacher, I think they railed against anybody sort of presuming on the power of the primal vow, for example, to come to a conclusion that, because they would be saved even in the context of performing evil acts, that therefore they should, again, presume on the vow and go ahead and perform evil acts just because they knew that they could still be reborn in the Pure Land. That's kind of getting off on a sidetrack relative to the Diamond Sutra. But again, I think the fundamental question here that this person is asking and raising is the question of emptiness, and whether emptiness implies a kind of nihilism. So that's something to contemplate and think about. My own view is that it does not, and that really, again, what it's pointing to is the experience in this very moment of all that I am experiencing in this very moment, which is suchness. And again, I think that's the flip side of emptiness. And in addition, I think that this notion of emptiness means emptiness of any independent, separate existence. And in the context of our interconnectedness, including not just with our fellow beings, but with the cosmic Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who dwell in the Sambhogakaya level of Buddhahood, my reply is Namo Mita Butsu, Namo Mita Butsu, Namo Mita Butsu.